Kia ora and welcome to the Rainbow Umbrella, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything under the rainbow. In this first episode of 2024, I'm speaking with some of Ōtepoti Dunedin's amazing drag artists. Welcome everyone, it's so exciting to have you all here. And welcome Noah via Zoom.
Hello.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Can we just go around the room and do a quick introduction, say who you are and how long you've been doing drag? And we'll start here.
Well, I've only been doing it for about 10 minutes. I've done one gig locally. My current working name is Deliria. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Amina Nostalgia. I started drag May 2022, my first show in the October of that year. Yeah.
My name's Mia Gain. I started drag about 2 years ago in the university college I was working at.
I'm Noah. I started practicing drag makeup in late 2018, early 2019. Did my first show November 2022, and then so it's been a couple of years now.
I'm Honkers and I started drag about early mid last year, so 2023.
I'm Anne Archie. Officially, I've been doing drag for 8 months, but as a trans man, I like to say that I did drag for 20 years.
Amazing.
I'm Kerosene. I've done it for about since, well, where do you consider it exactly started? But publicly, I walked out in makeup late 2022. Can't remember exactly when. But didn't really do it intensively until mid 2023. Yeah.
I'm Sam in Colour. I officially did my first drag performance as a drag prince, I think in 2016. So on and off since then as part of cabaret shows mainly.
Cool, and I think, Anne, you've raised a really important point there, just first of all talking about like doing drag behind closed doors, however you want to do it, and then actually coming out and doing drag in public. So has anyone got any experiences about that they want to talk about? Like, how did it feel doing drag in public for the first time?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm from Southland. There's no queer scene down there at all, and I basically discovered drag. It would have been probably like 15 at the time. Started watching Drag Race. Thought it was weird at first, and then I rewatched the season that was on Netflix at the time, and I was like, this was so cool. Started practicing drag makeup, and then it wasn't until I went to Auckland and met the top 5 of season 14, and I did my first show that night, and I worked alongside Anita Wiglet, and Jerry from the top 5 was there as well, so it was like a lot of fun, and I don't know, it was just really freeing. I felt like for a while I was kind of getting sick of drag just because I was, sitting in my bedroom for a long time just doing makeup and there was nothing else.
Yeah, that's so exciting, and what an experience for, a first public drag performance. Anybody else?
For me, I think like me out of drag, the makeup and stuff was just getting more and more and more intense. That it was just like the natural thing. And people would be like, "Would you want to do drag?" And I was like, I just like the makeup. And then in my head I was like, I really, really want to perform. But I think the opportunities, not being seen in Dunedin, I moved here in 2016, that it was like maybe just need to work on trying to just make it happen. And if I go out and drag, maybe people ask, do you perform? And I'm like, I want to. So that's how it sort of escalated, I think, to the point of making a character as Amina Nostalgia was just natural progression, I guess.
And that's also another interesting point, because the first time I met you, it was your makeup, and I was like, that's fabulous. So can you talk a little bit about the progression from just having an interest in makeup to actually creating a drag persona? How was that?
Yeah, I think because a lot of my inspirations were like flamboyant musicians or just like over-the-top alternative, that making the character for me, it was a bit tricky, and I think I'm still finding like my core, like this is my style. And I guess I'm still on that journey, to be completely honest, but I think for me the distinction between the two is like, nostalgia would be wigs, padding, like full glam or full realized look, and me is out of drag now is just sort of that midway point sometimes.
Yeah. Cool.
My first time performing was very much kind of a fluke. I work at yours Ōtepoti. It's a venue on Moray Place, and back in May, we had UniQ doing an open mic event there, and they wanted somebody from the venue to perform.
Mm-hmm.
So my coworkers asked me, because I'm the resident theater gay, and so I go home and I think about it. I'm like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I'll do a drag performance because I've wanted to do drag forever. I'll just use the makeup I have. I'm sure I've got a skirt in my closet. I've got some platform boots. I've got long hair. I'll tease it up. And I did just sloppy, trad goth makeup. Went to the talent show, did my number, had a blast. People loved it. People wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
And I go home that night and I start planning my first show the next month.
Amazing. That's so cool. That's so cool. And how did it feel, like, that transition from, oh, I wasn't expecting to do this, but it's something I love, to be like, I'm planning my first show. This is amazing. How did that feel?
Because even the first show was a bit like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Like, it was very much an experiment to see, like, if people would come, if they would want to give us money, what the turnout would be. And the venue had a capacity of 108, and we were easily over capacity by 20 people, not including the staff. Like, packed like sardines wall to wall.
Yeah.
So after seeing, like, that outpouring of support from the Ōtepoti community, it was like, oh yeah, like, we can do this for sure.
Yeah. It was a little bit like that, setting you guys up for performing at Rewind. It's, oh yeah, and then it sold out. I was like, shit, we need more seats. We need more room. But I mean, that's, you know, not a terrible problem to have.
Yeah.
Very cool. Anyone else?
For me, it was quietly doing it in my room, not really sharing it with anyone. And I shared with a couple of friends stuff I was doing. Like, I'd always be watching, I'm a massive No Doubt fan. I'd always pause the music videos and get Gwen's makeup and try and recreate that. I didn't really tell people, and then I was at this fashion show. It was like a fashion show cabaret thing out in Port Chalmers Town Hall, and my friends were like, I got thrown clothes and I like walked the runway, and I went, okay. And then my friends were like, do you want us to do your makeup? We're all doing makeup. And then my friend piped up and she was like, oh, you should do that drag you've been doing in your bedroom. And I went, oh, I don't know. And then I don't know if I would have showed off publicly yet. I don't think it's that good. And she went, and then she pulled out the photos that I'd done off my phone, and she literally just did my makeup for me, and then went, you're good. And I was like, okay. And so it wasn't my drag style now. I looked a bit more Florence and the Machine than Gwen Stefani, and but then I just went out, I got thrown some clothes, I like, put these on, walk out there, and I just walked the runway with no shoes on, don't know why. But there was no shoes to go around, and all the heels that they had were for really tiny women. Yeah, and I've got monstrous feet. Had to wait 6 weeks to get mine shipped in the post. My heels.
And then they didn't fit at first.
The first ones didn't fit, yeah.
Oh, no.
And then I had to wait another 6 weeks for a different pair. And then I got booked for my first show by my drag mother. She now doesn't live in New Zealand, and she booked me for a show, and then for about a month later, I was on stage at Dog with Two Tails, and I got to live out my Gwen Stefani fantasy doing Just a Girl. Like, it was great.
Amazing.
And that was my first 2 times. I guess I kind of cheated there. But
Yeah.
and then from then on out, it was just become what it is now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So one of the first things, we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but that's fine.
Yeah.
One of the first things I wanted to know was actually what sparked your interest in drag in the first place. Do we mind going around the room and just saying, you know, what got you into drag?
So my interest came from RuPaul's Drag Race initially, but I think a different show that I've sort of attached myself to a lot closer is Dragula, because they're more alternative styles, and like there's a lot more like horror and filth to it, not just like, yeah, like obviously there's like one very specific type that's displayed on RuPaul's Drag Race. After I did my first drag show, I was sort of, like, it was great, highly stressful. I ended up blacking out, not from alcohol, I'm sober, but like just emotionally. Yeah, so then from there I was sort of just like, no, I think I'll redirect my style closer to more like monster drag as opposed to just like femme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh yeah, how we got
Yeah, what sparked your interest? Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I've done the same thing before. I was like, I think I redirected that question. So yeah, I was always started growing my interest in like flamboyant musicians and emo culture, alternative. And I had an ex-girlfriend when we were like 14, and she would send me YouTube videos of like, these androgynous was like the big word around that time on YouTube. And some of them would be like, I identify as a drag queen, I do this, and I was like, it's interesting. I'm not that silently more and more interested. Like the transformation videos would just be like really calming to watch. And then I think before I even started watching Drag Race or knew what it was, there was transformations with James. Yeah. And that's how I sort of saw some of the key names. And then later on watching the seasons, I'm like, oh, this is why like, they're successful enough to be on this YouTube channel. And even some that didn't make it or get to Drag Race, seeing some of those just amazing transformations. For me, it was quite visual at first, and then the performance sort of came later because I didn't really know what it was, but that's how it started for me.
I think my interest in drag kind of started with developing my own queer identity. For me, it was moving to university was the first time that I was publicly out to a group of people. I'd moved away from home, I'd moved away from everybody I knew there, and it was an opportunity for me to be more comfortable in presenting who I wanted to be. And I think my introduction to drag was through watching Drag Race with a group of people, but I don't think I developed an interest in it myself until it was 2021. I was visiting some friends in Wellington who were working at one of the residential colleges, and they had organised drag shows for the residents, for the first year students, to participate and get dressed up and have fun. And I just saw that as a huge celebration of queer identity and queer people and queer stories, and that was truly inspiring. And so when I was applying to be an RA at a college the next year, I wanted to bring a little bit of that vibrancy and celebration to Dunedin as well, or to my college community. I had no experience with makeup or drag at that point, but I thought if I want to create a drag show in a college, I better learn. So I bought myself some makeup that summer. I have photos, but I don't show them to anyone because they are awful. Very first time I put on makeup was not a pretty sight. I think it's a little bit better now. But for me, my interest kind of from there grew, and I was able to, with the support of my employers, develop a drag show and then eventually an entire Pride Week for the college I was working at. And it was incredibly rewarding for me to have that trust put in me from the leaders of the college, but also to see the young people coming to Dunedin for the first time, to see that celebration of queer culture was really beautiful to see. For our students who identified as queer, but also for others who might be a first introduction to any kind of queer identity, that was truly a beautiful thing to be part of.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Noah?
I feel like I jumped ahead a little bit earlier. Really kind of basic, kind of again started off with Drag Race, but that kind of just was like my interest in watching drag is where that came from. But really me wanting to get into drag came from me, going on Instagram, looking up New Zealand drag, and then finding out there were drag queens here in New Zealand. And I would message a couple of them, like there's Siobhan Borealis and Lady Lay up in Auckland, message them, and they were the most lovely people. They gave me so many tips. I didn't know where to get shoes from for myself because I have size 12 men's feet, so I need size 14 women's shoes. And one of them, being a little bit shady, was like, oh, message this person, they have big feet just like you. I'm like, oh, cool, thank you. And then, that's kind of how I really became interested in drag. And then from there, that started me buying my first makeup palette, practicing makeup, and then, I don't know, eventually years later, doing my first show and then working with the people in Dunedin before I, up and left them.
That's my turn. So I haven't actually watched any drag races or anything of the shows online. All my inspiration for drag came from up in Auckland. There's an artist up there called Twinkle Bus, and I saw him start out drag and saw how cool and like how much fun he was having. And then I also had a friend, Justin Beverley, who also did drag, and I thought, oh, that looks so much cool, I want to try that. And then Anarchy hosted a show, and I saw advertised for it, and I was like, yo, set me up, I'll do this.
Nice. Amazing.
So I definitely grew up very enamored by drag, but there was one particular moment that was my made me want to do drag moment. So my mother showed me the Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was about 14 or 15, and initially she thinks like, oh, it's gonna weird him out, he's gonna be so freaked out by it. I loved it. I loved it. I turned around and spent $300 of my mother's money at the fabric store, and I made a Columbia costume that was like as screen accurate as I could possibly get it, down to like the stripes on the shorts, the color of the shoes, the exact like size of the fishnets, everything. I put my pussy into this outfit. And then a few years after I'd made the costume, my mom and I would go to our second Rocky Horror Picture Show like screening together, and this one is hosted by 2 drag queens. Their names were Peach Cobbler and Isolde Barron. So as soon as my mom and I walk into the venue, the 2 queens, like, they run up to me and they're like, oh my God, like, this is amazing. They're just gushing over my costume for a few minutes, and then they walk away. We go into the movie starts, we get to the time warp, everyone's like up and singing and dancing along. One of the drag queens makes eye contact with me from the stage, runs off the stage, runs up to my aisle, motions to me to join her on stage. And we make it back on just in time for me to lip sync and dance along with Columbia during her solos. And this is a theater of like 200 people or so, and I felt so loved and celebrated and cherished for my queerness and my art in that moment. And I was like, I want to bring this kind of joy to other people through theater, because I really loved theater. I was a theater kid all throughout high school and in uni as well. So I was like, oh my God, like, I could do this. And then I went to uni, so I was busy for a few years, but then when I was done with that, I started like actually doing it kind of full time.
That's so beautiful, amazing.
Very special moment, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, me?
Yes, you.
I feel like I jumped ahead, so I don't know where to start from, because I kind of partially touched on it. What made me realise I wanted to do drag was I'd been watching Drag Race for years to that point, but it was only in lockdown where I was like, I had so much free time and I had virtually no makeup. I had a little bit of party makeup from a party I went to before, and I did not save those photos. I think I went on a bit of a purge and deleted them all. Part of me wishes I had, but actually my initial early drag was rough, and that was rougher. But there was just something about being in lockdown, and it was just subsequent different. I was just seeing so much potential in it, and it was the only thing on TV was, and I was just like, oh, I'll watch some of this. And it was, then after that first lockdown, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to just experiment more. And then weirdly between lockdowns, it was like, I went and bought lots of stuff, and I was just like, I'll go get this, and this. And then the subsequent lockdowns happened, I think with the Delta outbreak, and it was, I kind of partially had an interest, but it was watching Bimini, Bob Lash on Drag Race UK 2, where it was the first time I'd actually seen what I would want to do with drag on TV. Like, there had been bits and pieces throughout, but it was the first time where I went, oh, that's me and a drag queen. And it was like, I don't know, and there was just something, and I just wanted to be in that world, and I don't know, and I just took it and ran with it, and yeah, and I think it was Bimini's fault, I think. And then subsequently just taking different inspirations from different women and different drag artists, and just accumulating that all into something. And it was just something freeing that gave me something to do other than drink in lockdown. Yeah, that was my nights in lockdown, getting drunk and doing drag makeup and seeing where it went. You know, like it was quite freeing in a way, and walking down the street in the middle of the night in full drag in lockdown there's something just I haven't actually spoken about this out loud before, but that's what I just did in lockdown, and it was just, I don't know how that all just came about. It just kind of collided all at the same time. That's how I got into drag, I guess.
And Sam?
I don't know where to start with mine. Because I never really watched RuPaul's Drag Race when I was growing up or when I was younger, because I didn't actually have access to it. It was just clips on YouTube, and I didn't have Netflix or anything like that. But I was a theatre kid, studied dramatic arts and film, and I used to get drunk and just like dance to Britney Spears a lot, and like, because I used to watch music videos religiously, I'd try and learn as much of her moves as I could as possible. And so eventually, like when I was studying in Wellington, my friends, and there was a big queer scene there, and obviously quite a few drag queens, they'd see me getting drunk at Ivy and be like, hey, have you ever thought about being a drag queen, because you know you've got a lot of confidence? I'm like, funny, not really. But eventually I was like, oh, maybe I could do that, because I do like performing, but I've not really got into it since I finished my course. And eventually I moved back down south, and I was like, oh, could I do this? And there wasn't really much of a scene, so I was just like looking around on Facebook groups, and I came across Lads on Tour by Feather Unsure. She was organising that sort of cabaret thing. So I messaged her. I was like, hey, I hear you like let drag queens perform sometimes. And she's like, yeah, come to one of our shows and have a look before, I put you in. I'm like, sweet, I'll go along and have a look. Went to the first one, but that's great. Looks like something I could get involved with. And so then I just started practicing a bit more on my own in my room. But then I was like, when I first started getting into it, because I bought all these costumes, all this money on costumes and makeup. It's like, I got dressed up, had the wig, the hair, the nails and everything. I was like, it doesn't feel quite right being a drag queen. So I was like trying to create my own identity that, it was still drag, but felt more like me. And eventually I said, I was like, well, how do I get comfortable enough to do this? And so that's when I settled on being a drag prince. Because I thought, well, Britney Spears is the princess of pop, Prince himself, the artist formerly known as, questioned the way we present ourselves as a different gender as well. And I was like, okay, I'll be a drag prince. I'll be somewhere in between. It's fine. I'll give it a go. And I just really like the idea of like, even though drag performing is quite often a lip sync, I didn't want it to be a straight out lip sync. It's like, how do I make this more live? So I just downloaded a bunch of tracks off YouTube or downloaded a bunch of tracks legally.
Good stuff.
And I was like, I just came up with these really odd mashups that were kind of like based on or inspired by Britney Spears' own performances. And eventually I was like, I don't know what people are going to expect when they see me coming up on stage dressed as half a boy, half a girl, in heels and makeup, and then lip syncing to Britney Spears, who also lip syncs. And so I was like, but that's how it kind of happened. I just got involved with the practicing alone, settling on my own identity of being a drag prince, and then eventually went to Lades on Tour, and what happened next was just a surprise for everyone as much as them. So
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you everyone for sharing your stories. That all sound so lovely. Yeah, so as drag artists, you all kind of have at least two identities. How do you find navigating this? Can it be difficult in your daily life to navigate having, at least two identities? Do you find that there's a bit of crossover? We're going to flip it and go this way now.
Cool. For me, Sam in Colour, the idea was that day to day I'm Sam White, this very boring white collar worker that sits in an office. So when I got out of the office, I could become someone completely different, who was more flamboyant, who was more colourful, who was painted in rainbows and glitter and everything like that. And so for me, it's not so much of a different identity, it's just who I'm supposed to be. Because it's kind of hard to explain. It is a different identity, but at the same time, it's who I actually am.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that during the day, I'm Sam in white. I'm Sam who's boring. But then at night time, I turn to Sam in colour, who is wonderful and flamboyant and fun. So it's just more embracing my more flamboyant and gay side, I guess, than what I get to present to the world on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, it's just flipping that at night time and becoming someone different.
Yeah, and that's a really beautiful point. Thank you for bringing that up. It's not necessarily a different identity, it's an extension of who you are.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
For me, it's a hard question. For so long, I kept them so separate because it was something I just did in lockdown in my bedroom for so long, and it was something isolated to that for so long. And for so long, I always thought it was a freeing thing because it was something I wasn't able to experience as me in my everyday life. And I don't know what happened, and I don't think I only worked out more recently after in the last few months doing drag quite regularly. They kind of blur into one for me. It's like over this last year, I don't know what's Leo's wardrobe and what's Kira's wardrobe anymore, because it kind of blurs into one at points. When I'm doing boy makeup, it is just Kira, but just toned down. But I don't know, there was something, I think it's been a process of realising I don't need to keep it a secret, and I also do have access to that almost superhero energy you get from being in drag, not in drag. And I think there's still two very separate entities, but it's more merging them as one. And I don't think I've fully grappled with it fully yet at this point. Talk to me in a year's time, I may have a completely different answer, and it may be more thought out. But I think they are one and the same, but they are one and different at the same time. And I think there's a dichotomy between the two that I don't know yet. So watch the space, I think. Yeah.
Excellent.
For me, before I transitioned, I was very hyper feminine. I was wearing like lots of makeup, big wings, colorful eyeshadow. Like I basically dressed like this before I transitioned. And after I started hormones and I started dressing more masculine and getting more comfortable in the masculine side of my identity, I really missed being able to dress hyper feminine, like do the cute makeup and have cute hair and like da da da. And so drag for me, it's this really amazing outlet to express myself outwardly in whatever presentation I want and still have my gender recognized, whatever that is. And I say I'm a trans man, but that's a bit wobbly. So it's definitely a way to explore gender fluidity and presentation and still like remain true to myself and not feel like I'm putting up a farce anymore. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you.
I can really relate to your anarchy. Last year my counselor was like, you should be a drag queen, so you have a way to express your femininity even though you present as like really masculine, non-binary. But yeah, for me, my drag persona Honkers is actually more of a drag clown. The reason for that is because I didn't really want to go for queen, as it just made me feel really, it just kind of like off-putting me, like with Sam. And drag king, I was like, I really want to dress really feminine and have skirts and like be able to go around in it. So I went for the gender neutral one, which was drag clown. And it has really helped me feel like more comfortable in that. And recently I've been trying more drag king looks, and it's like so euphoric feeling when I look really masculine. I'm like, yes, I like that. But I think one of the best things about my drag clown honkers is that whenever my friends drag me out clubbing, because I'm that like uni age, I can dress up as a clown and everyone leaves us alone. One night I like left my friends alone for a bit and like so many guys on them, and as soon as I got back, no one. This is the best. It's like scary dog privileges, but it's like clown.
It's amazing. Unintended side benefits, right?
Yeah. Like piggybacking off that a bit, I definitely prefer to label myself as a drag artist rather than locking myself into like the queen box or king box or anything like that, because I still want to explore all of these options of like extreme masculinity or extreme androgyny, so like I think it's really important to keep like the fluidity of drag in mind when we're talking about it.
Well, it is such a binary art form in its heyday, and but it is also an art form that we can break down.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of its political nature and flexibility.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
I totally feel that, because when I tried to look for a gender neutral thing, the only thing I could think of was jester, but I don't have any jester hats. And so I'm a clown, but I'm not a funny person. None of my performances have been funny. They've been, both have been spooky.
The alien one was fantastic. It was so funny.
Okay, that one was funny. Well, one of my performances. That's it. But yeah, I feel like drag definitely needs to try breaking down some of the gender in some parts as well. It's like hypering it up as well.
I mean, I think you also have an excuse to get a jester's hat now, right?
Yeah. As soon as I have a jester hat, I'm changing my title from drag clown to drag jester.
Yeah. You just call yourself a drag jester.
And I'll be part of the royal court, okay?
Yeah, finally. That's amazing. I love it. Noah?
For me, well, I don't know, I've not really talked about this before, but when I was younger, I used to be like quite a lot bigger, and I feel like that caused a little bit of like gender dysphoria for me. I wasn't sure if I just wanted to do drag or if I was trans or what, and like for a while I thought that I'd have to be trans because, I don't know, I was big, everyone looked at me like I was very feminine and like I was a girl, like I'd be asked a lot if I was a girl, which, it didn't bother me because I've always been so comfortable with myself, and I feel like that comes a lot from my parents. I was brought up, my dad throughout my entire life, like, he did the whole parent thing, like, oh, do you have a girlfriend? And then he'd be like, or a boyfriend, like, he'd be like, I don't care, like, I want you to be happy, that's all I care about. And then doing drag, and then partially with some of the weight loss I've done as well, like, it's really helped me, I wouldn't say that I'm non-binary, but I'm, like, people ask me what my pronouns are, but for me, like personally, it's really not a big deal for me. Like you can call me however you see me. Like if you feel more comfortable saying she, her to me, or he, him to me, they, them, that's up to you. Like I know who I am, and that's kind of how I've always thought about myself. And I feel like drag has helped me a lot with that, just with it being able to, like it is that more feminine side of me. And I don't know, out of drag, I like to not be masked, but like to switch it up a little bit, whereas in drag, I'm always very hyper feminine, and I like being pretty and like sexy, and like, I don't know, I like to be like, oh, she's so calm, like she's covered. Very narcissistic in drag, to be honest.
Awesome, thank you.
I think, like lots of people's stories, for me, Mia is an extension of me, and it's an extension of that femininity that I didn't necessarily express when I was younger. Through, you know, my young years or teenage years, I was in the closet about being gay or being queer, so I hid that, and, you know, I was very conscious of any aspect of myself that might be portrayed as feminine and the judgment that is placed on people because of that. You know, there were kids at school who would constantly ask me if I was queer, and I'd always shut down, of course not. Yeah, I was. But I think for me, exploring drag, it's having the confidence to explore that feminine part of myself, and to do it confidently and comfortably. And yeah, it's an extension of me. And I think over the last little while, it's been, you know, exploring that femininity just in day-to-day life as well. You know, it's not just, I can only express that when I'm Mia. I can express that in other parts now, and I think through drag, it's made me feel more comfortable in exploring that fluidity of gender expression. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you.
So, a few months before I started putting the drag persona in, it was the Halloween previous to my first show, and I was really inspired by Hoso Teratama from Dragula. The makeup just so big, like nothing I had seen at that point, and it just keeps leveling up. But I wanted to do like a clown look, and I hadn't sewn at that point, so I was just stitching more and more accessories onto this clown look. And I went to just a friend's like flat party. There was probably like 15 of us total, and I was like, this was like almost like doing drag. Like I didn't really feel like myself at that point. Like it felt weird to just be like, here's Sean as a clown turning up at this flat party, when it was probably more suitable for a performance or whatever. As I've done more and more drag, I do find myself, I do quite like hyper feminine like gowns and stuff. I don't think it'll always be that way. I'm quite like a punk nature, alternative, androgynous in day to day, so I feel like you can draw inspiration, or I do, from so many different things that I don't want to limit. But then also how I differentiate is how I said before, like Amanda will probably always be padded. Who knows? And like the wigs, like, yeah.
The wig.
Yeah. I think that's how I sort of switch the two. Yeah.
Well, with mine, I'm sort of like one is more so like shifting into like a creature, like non-human sort of expression, probably quite horrific and terrifying. Like there's always going to be weird contact lenses going on. Also, I think it's a good way to like address all of the like low stimulation that I receive from like everyday life. Like I'm a person who needs like a lot of like high stimulation to stay like entertained or like base level just happy. Yeah, so this is like a really good way for me to just like get all that out of the way, the like creative expression and stuff. So like maybe there is like some middle ground there, just maybe not feeling like I can relate to like all of mankind going on, sort of just being a bit perplexed about it, being like, maybe I'll express that by just being like a horrific monster. Yeah.
I love that though. And I like how everyone, you know, there's kind of an underlying thing about, you know, the extension of who you are as a person, but everyone's kind of got their own unique take on it, and I just think that's really beautiful. I would like to now talk about the Ōtepoti drag community. What's it like? How's it going? How is it being a part of it? I know that it's growing quite a lot, which is an amazing thing to see. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Everyone's looking at me.
It's new, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely new, because before I started putting on shows, there weren't any like dedicated drag shows in Dunedin. There'd be like a cabaret show, or there'd be drag as like part of another event, or there'd be like a touring act coming to town, but like no like local drag focused gigs like that. And I was like, well, I work in a venue. I know a couple people who do drag, who know a couple more people who do drag. I can just put on a show. So I put on a show, and I put on another show, and I put on another show. And from that, just word of mouth getting around that there was a drag scene here, we started getting more and more opportunities from outside of just the work I was doing. Amina had previously worked with WOOF, but WOOF just past Halloween also asked Mia and I to join for that. We were approached by the events coordinator at the museum for things. You know, we're working with the library for story times. We're working with Dunedin Pride for Pride Month. I was approached by a circus and asked to join a traveling circus. So like, just putting in the effort and making something happen, making opportunities, presenting these opportunities to the community. It's done a lot for the drag scene just by being seen and doing something. Because people love drag these days. They really want to see it. They don't care if it's shit. You know, they just want to see local drag. So it's amazing that, you know, we have this amazing audience base in Ōtepoti that like will come to shows and will pack out our shows. So it's like constantly growing and expanding. People are always asking to like join our shows. We've got new people joining the group all the time. I have people from out of Dunedin frequently asking me to come down to my shows like later in the year. So it's we're kind of getting on the map almost, like
I think touching on to what it's done for Dunedin, it's like most of our audiences have never been to drag shows given it's so new, and we're often taking their drag virginity every night, and there's something when you talk to them after the show about how euphoric it is and not being able to, and it's like thinking back for myself, like the first time I went to either Auckland or Wellington and seen those drag scenes, I'm like now seeing that it feels weird to be on the giving side of that rather than the receiving side of that. It's of that energy that you're a part of. But there's something different where the whole room, the majority of the room is on that and taking it in for the first time, which is different from when you go to somewhere that has a more established drag scene that has those people are the minority in the room, where people almost don't think twice about seeing a drag queen in their bar or out on the street, you know. But like here, it's so novel to lots of our audience, and there's something, I don't know, there's something.
It's fresh because it hasn't like been like permanent in Dunedin for about a decade. So like people are just really keen on something new in Dunedin and weird things coming back to Dunedin.
Because I've been part of the cabaret stuff for like so many years, and the cabaret stuff was like, there was only one or two drag queens or drag performers that were part of that, and it was, people would be going there to see the strippers, or they'd be going there to see the clown acts or the comedians or the actual musicians, and so like being a drag performer at that, they weren't there to see drag, so you kind of felt like a minority not being able to like fully go all out, and so with the new scene that's starting now, obviously, people are actually going to the shows, as you said, you know, it's novel, but they're going there because they want to see drag on its own. They're not going there to see everything else. It's just for drag.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful, particularly when you talk about, you know, people seeing drag performances for the first time. And, you know, I think the word joy has been thrown around a couple of times, and that's the word that comes to me when I think about drag, like the joy of it. You know, you think of those people that are coming to see it for the first time, they're just like, oh, this is incredible, and you know, they want to engage with you, they want to korero with you afterwards, like the joy. And you can also see that kind of moving into the mainstream media as well with shows like We're Here. Like some of those shows can be quite difficult to watch, but the performances at the end, I know they're all produced and everything, but like just the joy as well, that's what shines out for me. So I guess pulling on that thread, I'm interested in drag in a wider sense, particularly the proliferation of drag shows and drag culture in the mainstream media. So do you see any negatives from the proliferation of this?
I think that, like, if we talk about drag shows, like televised shows, stuff like Drag Race, they push like one narrative of what drag is, and like Drag Race has pushed that narrative for the past like 15 years. It's only really been in the last year or so that they've started to cast more alternative style like drag queens. Like for years they weren't casting even openly trans women on the show. They wouldn't cast trans men, and I think that was it was a really negative thing for the drag community because it had put into a lot of like, and we were going to call them drag race fans, not drag fans, because a lot of people are drag race fans, and they had got the idea that drag was this hyper femininity, men dressing in a wig and a dress, and that was it. It was like it couldn't be anyone else, and it really has closed off a lot of opportunities for a lot of people, and I think it's really done a lot of damage to the drag community, and it's something that we're finally starting to recover from, and I think it's good that we're starting to recover from that, but we should never have had to close the space off to other queer people to just one type of person.
Yeah, for sure. If I watched drag shows or Drag Race and that was my inspiration, I wouldn't have gone to drag because that's so not me. But the local drag scene is so much more queer and like open than just being yourself with drag t-shirts.
But I remember I had no idea what a drag king was until, like, because drag queens were everywhere because of Drag Race and other famous faces in comedy. But like it was when House of Drag came on and Hugo Girl walked in on the scene, and I was like, it was like eye-opening to me because that was the first time I'd seen anything like that, and I thought drag was just hyper femininity, and there was something like, I don't know, it was eye-opening in a way because like as at that time being only 15 and going like, oh, this is like more than, and I was just a Drag Race fan at that point. I wasn't like Noah said at that point, I would have just been a Drag Race fan. So it was like seeing that as an audience member go, oh, there's actually more out there. And it's a shame that they decided to part ways with House of Drag, and then because it was a place for New Zealand drag, well, I say New Zealand drag, it was just Wellington and Auckland drag, and Spanky Jackson, but like that was it. Like it was. So
if any
it was,
television producers are listening, we'll soon put on another TV show. Just hit us up.
imagine the Dunedin Queens taking House of Drag by storm.
Oh.
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Imagine I went on a drag clown.
Imagine if like Survivor and we went to like Christchurch, Dunedin, Wellington, Auckland, all competing in different
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do Big Brother, so I think that would be great.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Returning to Drag Race, my main complaint with it all the time is that it's very Americanized, even
Yeah.
the international franchises.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing like the true UK drag scene. You're not seeing the true Down Under drag scene. You're not even seeing the true Canadian drag scene, because even Canada's drag scene varies a lot from America's, despite being right next door to each other. You're expected to pump out very high production costumes when, you know, like Down Under, we don't get these amazing fabrics that they have in America to turn out the same looks that they're turning out on America's Drag Race, right? So it's putting out this standard that's more or less exclusive to one part of the world and isn't always accessible or doable by any means in some parts of the world, unless you wait like 6 months for something to come in. I want to see more drag television that showcases local scenes and like more cultural drag and like these, what each country's drag like comes from. What are the main like features of it, and kind of focus on like what are these little variances that we see across the globe in drags that's evolved over the years.
I think that would be fabulous. And as you said, any producers that are listening, I think Ōtepoti would be more than happy to start.
I've always thought like a show set in a particular bar, like almost like the Real Housewives of yours, if we did a Dunedin example, like, you know, like something of that sort of vibe, you know, like just because you get to see people in their nitty gritty and you'll be able to see performances and then the interactions between the scene going on, because then it's showing that slice of life more in a less produced way. Obviously you're still going to produce a show within it, but like it's going to be more real and more almost documentary based, almost like we're here, but more about the scene itself, not it, you know.
Yeah, I just kind of want to pull on the thread a little bit about the one expected look when you watch shows like Drag Race, because for me that was kind of my first kind of experience of like drag and a lot of it. But I will never forget the moment when Sasha Velour walked out, that first moment, and she has been my favourite ever since. But I was like, you don't look like anyone else. I fell in love instantly. But her entrance, I don't think anyone will ever beat it in my eyes. And
That's exactly how I feel with Evie Oddly as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
absolutely, yeah.
One of my favourite people to ever have been on Drag Race.
Yeah, but it's interesting now that you kind of only get, I haven't watched too much of 16, but like you kind of only get one queen that's a little bit different every season. I think it's starting to increase now, but like the gap between Sasha and Evie, it's like, I mean, I might be wrong, but I can't think of anyone else that stands out in the way that they do. And it's like, well, actually drag is so much more than, as you said, Noah, a wig and a dress. It's so much more.
Like it almost feels like the way that they're casting is like a diversity thing in like a business where they're like, all right, we need one person of this, we need one person of that, and this, so that we can be like, we're diverse here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, cool. Well, there's the one creative art contestant.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to all of the other like high femme women.
Yeah. Well, why was Gottmik the first trans man? Like, why did it take that long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A negative, I think, is that a lot of the shows that are on mainstream are competition and contests. And those are exciting to watch. Like, I mean, I love Drag Race and I have for years. And I like, contests just are exciting by nature. But I think then a lot of people go to shows and they try and think, who was the best? Or like, or they'll even ask you like, happy to share my thoughts on other people's performances, but I'm like, I'm not going to rank like who's the bottom or who's the top. Like, that's like, that's RuPaul's Drag Race, and we're putting on a drag show where everyone's showing what they do and different photos of it. And I mean, drag pageants will have a place forever, and there's winners in that. But I think just in regular drag shows, it isn't always a competition. I think that's a downside to it.
Yeah.
I think it might just need to be explained to people. It's not always who's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point, particularly because for so many people, their only experience, especially if they're going to a live show for the first time, will be a competition-based show. It's like, well, that's not necessarily how it works.
And if they do go to a show and their experience of it is what they've seen on RuPaul's, it's just, they're probably just going to think, oh, it's just going to be lip syncing and walking around on stage. Whereas if you go to like an actual solo drag artist show, it's going to be comedy, it's lip syncing, it's going to be inviting people on stage. It's not just going to be music and everything like that.
Yeah.
RuPaul's Drag Race has the saturation of the market basically, but even it focuses quite a lot more on the personality and the disagreements behind the scenes than anything else. And whilst drama can be fun, you know, for me, like when I watch cooking shows with my mother, there's so many different cooking shows that you can get. Ones where they show you how they're doing the baking, how they're actually doing, oh, I'm doing this, this, and this with the meat. I'm doing this, and this, and this with the young, and saute that. And so you kind of learn a little bit about how to cook whilst you're watching it. Whereas if I watch Drag Race, I don't learn how to do makeup. I don't learn how to sew things together. And then there's all this bitchiness and cadence about, oh, this bitch doesn't know how to sew. I'm like, well, show us how to sew.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to see a competition on if they're going to compete with another. It would be nice to see the development behind from the start to the finish, not just here's the end product, everyone.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
I think that another issue that like Drag Race causes is it's not Drag Race's fault that this is people's takeaway, but a lot of people's takeaway from it is that the people that are doing drag are just drag queens and that there isn't a person behind that and that they live their life in drag 24/7. And that's just not true. Like when I'm not doing drag, which is not very often, I'm honestly just in bed just watching stuff most of the time. Like I'm really not that interesting outside of drag in my opinion. And it's like, that is what all drag queens are like. We all have our own interests and not everything we do is drag centric.
Yeah, that's another really beautiful point.
Going off of the problem of Drag Race only giving off one view, I think partially it's not fully Drag Race's fault. I think it's more the TV landscape's fault at large because that's the only outlet that's been opportune to Drag Race because RuPaul probably was one of the only people in the American scene to cross over into celebrityism. They were like, I'll just give it to him because he's the one people will know. Now that Ru has been able to showcase other people, they haven't been able to branch outside that. They're just putting TV itself has just put all their drag eggs into one basket and leaving it there. And I think TVNZ was a great example. As soon as RuPaul came knocking on their door, they ditched House of Drag, and then they took the producers from that and put them on Down Under. And I think it's a problem everywhere else. They only want to show one type of thing on any given network, or even some networks are going, oh, the Drag Race is too big to compete with them, we're not going to bother. And I think Dragula is one of those few exceptions that have gone against that TV. Sorry, I'm a film student, I got a bit nerdy there. But like, I think it was one of the few that has kind of tried to compete in that way, and if they do try and compete, they try and use Drag Race alum, which is good, but then it just feels like, but it's still just an offshoot of Drag Race more. And even then there isn't that many opportunities for Drag Race alum anyway. So like, I think it's just because the TV landscape is so rigid in their thinking, they're not able to move beyond just Drag Race. And I think Drag Race wouldn't be quite so much of a problematic in its depictions if there were more other depictions being shown on other shows or film or even in the music or any sort of entertainment space in general.
Let's flip that though, because I want to talk more about the joy of drag. What are the positives from the proliferation of drag in the media though? There's got to be some good things from it, right?
It's brought drag to a lot of people's attentions though. Like, a lot of people now have somewhat of an understanding of what drag is. Like, yeah, there are the negatives that we just spoke about, but at the same time, RuPaul's Drag Race, like it being in the mainstream like it is, there are so many more people that are at least aware of drag, and they don't look at it as like this weird taboo thing as much as they would have used to like 20 years ago. So we're getting a lot more people that are interested in coming to watch drag shows and be involved in the drag scene as well.
Yeah, basically what you said was like, it introduces people to it and it exposes them to it where they might not normally have been. Younger queer kids that might be interested in drag, they might not get that interest or desire to give it a go themselves if they didn't have that show on TV in the mainstream way. And what I got, because I started watching it and so I saw who these drag queens were, I saw their personalities in front of the camera and who they were behind the makeup and everything like that. And you could go from a RuPaul's Drag Race and then you can go like, oh well, I like that queen, I liked what they did with their makeup, I'll see if I've got a YouTube channel. And then you can go and see if that's what you want to learn from and where they might inspire you to take your own identity and create it yourself.
And I think that's really important, and definitely, I mean, from an outsider looking in, I guess, perspective, having that thread to pull on, it's like, hey, I found this person, I love what they do, now I can learn more about, the artistry, the makeup, the culture, everything.
I think it's so important to have queer visibility as well, due to lots of political climates or laws in the past here, like where homosexuality was a crime, or lots of crimes for being queer, just existing. And so I think to see somebody who is a little bit like you, and they're celebrated in that way is extremely beneficial for young people, and I think it's beneficial for families as well. Like we say, it exposes lots of people to drag, but also queer communities. And that might be just the little straw that is finally able to help somebody become more confident of their identity or to talk to their family about their identity. And I think that's extremely beneficial.
Again, pulling on that a little bit, drag is a space that can often, create a lot of backlash. So I would just be interested if anyone is comfortable sharing how, if you've experienced any of that, how do you look after yourselves or fellow drag artists in the community?
I think being in drag kind of opened my eyes because I don't have the lived experience of being a woman, but I got in the shoes of a woman for a day and I realised what women have to go through. I went into one of the straight nightclubs in town after a drag show in full drag and I got mistaken for being a woman. And without going in too deep into it, it was eye-opening because I'd heard it intellectually and understood it intellectually, what it's like to be subject to the male gaze, but to be mistaken as a woman and treated as for that and I realised my privilege as being a man, also being dressed like a woman, because I could take that off later when I went home. But there was something interesting, and it's not something I would choose to do again. And I think there's also a privilege in that too, where a woman can't have that choice. But I think there was backlash in that way because receiving a negative energy back from the drag, and I think it was worse once they worked out I wasn't a woman, and then it was suddenly my fault that I didn't tell them, and I'm like, well, you came with me. But like, I think it's backlashes because people aren't used to it, and I think it's because people are so square, to put it lightly, and I think there hasn't been that education for a lot, particularly men out there, and particularly straight men, where they haven't got a lot of all of that. Yeah.
But after experiencing that, how did you look after yourself?
I don't know particularly. I left. But I don't know if I did, to be honest. I think I just ran. And I walked home. And I just was like, in my head, and I was like, I can't sit down, can't sit in it. And I live 7 k's out from the CBD, so it was a long walk, and there's a couple of hills in there. And it was like, very like, I was so in my head, and I don't think I did look after myself. I think I just stayed awake and overthought it all. I don't think I did. And I think looking back, I should have done some way more safer things than walk home with full drag, 7 k's. But I don't think I was doing particularly well, and I think I should have. I think I just upped and left my friends, and I think I should have stayed with them. But I don't know. If something like that happened again, I don't think it would be quite so much of a shock, so I'll be able to handle it in a better way. But I think I should have probably reached out to my friends around me who were in the bar at the time. I think I just upped and left them. Yeah, I don't know where to go with that, and I don't know how to fully answer that question because I don't think I did do what I should have done. Yeah.
And I mean, when you find yourself in a scenario like that, especially if it's the first time you've experienced anything like that, you can't necessarily prepare for it.
Yeah.
So, as much as you say, I probably should have done this, I probably should have done this, if I put myself in your shoes, I probably would have done the same thing and just been like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
We had an incident at a show in September. At the end of the show, there were 4 heterosexual cisgender men who came in after the show was over, after everybody had left, and were taking pictures off on stage. And they try to get on stage and they start harassing us. I think this was less backlash and more disrespect, but I'm trying to get them to leave the venue because it's my venue. I work there. I own it as well, co-owner. And so I'm like, you guys need to leave. And they're taking their sweet time leaving. And it's not until one of my straight co-workers says to these guys, you need to leave, that they bolt. And I'm screaming at them to get the fuck out of my venue.
They brought in alcohol though.
They brought in alcohol to an
Yeah.
all-ages venue. We don't have a license. And I was like, you need to leave with that alcohol. And they're like, or what? And I'm like, you need to fucking leave because we're not licensed. And B, I don't like that fucking attitude of this is what you're bringing in. 5 minutes into being in here, you can leave right now because I don't want to see what's coming up after this.
Yeah, that was really, like, I was so glad that you could speak up like that because my response is sort of freeze.
Yeah.
So to have you be the strong voice and then eventually the co-worker be able to, I was just sort of just like, oh, because I think that might be my first sort of in-person experience.
Like I felt empowered because it was like, well, like I'm a co-owner here. Like I have the power to remove you from my venue. You can just get fucked and leave.
And you handled it really
And like if it wasn't my own venue, I probably wouldn't have felt as comfortable doing that. You know, it was like.
But you also had people around you that you knew would support you as well.
There was the entire cast still there, and there was the whole staff in the kitchen, and all I needed to do was get staff from the kitchen if something started going bad. But we got them out, and I don't think they're gonna try coming back to that venue ever again.
Good, because they would not be welcome.
Thankfully, in my experience, I haven't had much backlash like in person or resulting from me performing drag, but someone in my personal life cut off communication stuff with me after I posted that I was doing drag. So I think for me, it is really helpful to focus on the people that are there for you and do respect you and what you do and have interest. And that goes in anything in your life. Like, if people can't handle one of your hobbies and interests and passions, like, whether that's drag or whether it's you like going on hikes, like you take that hike and you hike with your friends, and people that like to hike, like that was really important to remember.
Yeah, I mean, as cliche as the saying comes, like, don't yuck someone's yum. Like, it's, if as long as what someone is into is not hurting themselves or anyone else, like, it doesn't matter.
It literally does not matter.
So it's really good that you focused on, the people around you that were supportive of you and that were, it's like, this is what you want to do. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And it was a few days before my first performance. So I
oh
was
my
definitely
goodness.
like,
okay.
Focus on this performance
Yeah.
and the opportunities that are coming out of it rather than the bad.
From my experience, a lot of like backlash is generally just people telling you things about yourself. Like it's like, oh, you're so gay, oh, you're so girly, and it's like, okay, like what is that going to do to me? I know I'm literally wearing makeup and a wig and I'm trying to look like I know that I'm a man attracted to other men, like you getting from
Thank you for pointing that out. I was not aware.
I don't understand that element of the human condition where people will point out the obvious. Like, I met up with someone from Tinder for the first time, and the first thing he said to me was, well, you're short. I was like, shit, am I? I had no idea.
Oh, no one ever told me.
So a lot of like, for me, it's just like, I know not everyone is as lucky as I am to have grown up with such accepting parents, and because I have been that lucky, I've just like my whole life I've kind of just known who I am, so I've kind of just been able to brush like all these comments off, and it's kind of just something that like you just kind of learn how to do over time, and it really just starts to not affect you, because it's like, well, you can say that if you want, if that's making you feel better, so what? It's just not affecting me. Like, I know who I am.
For me, I get like a lot of odd stares whenever I walk around in my drag, for sure. The good thing is no one approaches me because I just look away. They're like, nah, it's not safe. For me, it's always my friends. Always like make fun of things or how people look as well. But also confetti. You were saying in the park, guys being rude. Whenever there's like some guy being our face, because I don't go into clubs alone without my friends, and like it's confetti. Best thing ever. If someone's in your face and you just throw confetti in their face, they're like, what? And then you can leave. You're not hurting them, you're not hurting anyone, you're just confusing them.
Smoke screen.
So I always, whenever going out, always have pop confetti at my friends. Nobody gets a problem.
I think that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
What you gotta do, bitch?
Amazing. And the best thing about it is you won't have to clean it up after. Because that's
great.
the worst thing about confetti, having to clean it up afterwards.
I always want to involve confetti in like my performances, but I'm like, oh, it's like just
As long as
affecting the
it's
venue.
paper,
I've always-
I've
I've always thought like banks shouldn't just use the blue things for leaking. If they just set off confetti and glitter, you'll be able to find that person because they can take the clothes off, but the glitter will stay there.
There is
Stay
actually
there.
forensic science, like actual divisions, forensic sciences that tracks people based on that sort of thing as well. Like they can get to that fine detail, like this particular
trash
glitter and stuff like that. I was listening about,
We could go off the whole true crime tangent. I'm doing an episode on true crime in the future, so maybe we can get in touch.
Right, I'm a murderer, so.
Well, cool. You free in September? Amazing. Excellent. So, what can we look forward to from Ōtepoti Drag in 2024?
Plenty.
There are 2 monthly shows happening, one at yours and one at Inch Bar. The one at yours happens towards the last weekend of every month, and the one at Inch Bar will be happening towards the first weekend of every month. And then there are heaps of events lined up for March Pride Month that we can't really talk about right now just yet until they're properly announced. That is coming up. And potentially heaps and heaps more. We're still early in the year and not all the bookings have come through yet, so we're kind of just waiting to see what else, but there's heaps coming up for February and March, so keep your eyes out for that.
That's so exciting. That's so exciting. Okay.
And if everyone wants to know, sorry, I'm speaking on your behalf here, but like,
You go.
if anyone wants to know, because there's a lot of us to follow, you can follow the one-stop page that Anna set up, the Dunedin the Ōtepoti or
Ōtepoti
Drag
Drag
Directory.
Directory.
Yes.
There we go.
You can follow that. We've got all our we're slowly uploading all the performers, and then we announce events as they happen. So it's one page that you can go to find, hopefully, all of the drag happening in Dunedin.
Amazing.
Ōtepoti Drag Directory.
Excellent. That's such a beautiful idea. Right, to cap us off, I'm probably going to ask you all the hardest question. In one sentence, what's your favourite thing about drag?
I'm not going first.
Looking kind. Who's gonna say it?
Amazing.
The feeling you get while performing or after your performances.
Mhm.
Just the ultimate creative outlet. Full stop.
I think it's me at my highest form. Yeah, I won't over-explain. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. Beautiful.
My favourite thing is like the community that is built around drag, and then also like that community, everyone there is just so creative. Like you find so many different people that are doing so many different things in drag, and that's just one of my favourite things because not one performer is the exact same as another performer.
Beautiful.
I think for me, it's the ability to celebrate and uplift queer stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's just rebelling from the status quo.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's being able to express myself in a way that is different from what other people expect of me. Like every day, I'm just this boring person, but then at night time, I get to turn into salmon colour, the colourful, and spending time to truly express myself in a way that is unique to who I am is just a lot of fun. I love spending hours like putting the different tracks together and hoping that the people that are there in the audience get to enjoy it and be surprised by what happens.
Perfect. So yeah, the joy of drag, right?
Absolutely.
Amazing. This has been so much fun, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here. Ōtepoti Drag Directory, and keep an eye out for the amazing shows that are coming up this year.